That much we've heard from the House of Representatives at the floor, where the Minister for Finance, Kemi Adeosun, was very, very vocal about the way to go about this issue. And also we heard the Minister for Budget and Planning, Udo Udoma, also there. Now I'm being joined by the Executive Director of Transform Nigeria Initiative, Law Mifo. I want to thank you so much indeed for coming on State of the Nation.
Thank you.
You heard this, the Minister for Finance.
Yeah.
She did say that that much, looking about 42 billion, is to be paid to the pensioners. As a matter of fact, they've actually gone a step forward and have paid in $41.5 billion to Pencom. That would be Naira to Pencom, just so that this scheme can get off. But do you perceive that the government is now taking the right steps to address these issues that you have faced for so long?
Well, I think federal government has taken a good step in the right direction. Yes, fine. But I must say, it's a far cry from what is expected. I'll tell you why. You know, under defined pension scheme, right, you have a cumulative backlog of about 187. Then under contributory pension scheme, you have cumulative about 285 billion. If you combine the two, you're talking about an excess of about 400 billion. Now, if you pay 54 billion, because that's what I understand government has been committed to at the moment.
So they've actually paid 41.5 billion.
Yeah, I'm aware that there is another 12 billion that is somewhere, going to them as well. So I think there is a maximum of about 54 billion. Now, yes, good, but a far cry. And I don't understand why the federal government is treating this issue in this manner. It is not supposed to be a piecemeal issue. In 2014, when they needed over 90 billion to clear the backlog, they budgeted only about 60.
So at this time now, are the pensioners receiving the money? Has anyone received the money?
I think they just made the commitment. They would any moment from now. But what they will release, or what they have released, and what the pensioners will get, will be a fraction. It won't be more than 20% of the overall entitlement. That is where my problem is. If you release 20% of their total entitlement and you create the impression that you have cleared the backlog, Nigerians need to know that the federal government is committed to clearing about 20% of their total commitment. And it is not supposed to be so. See, under contributory pension scheme, for example, the federal government ought to be paying the required 10%, while the workers will pay 8%, as the case may be.
Now,
and the point I'm trying to make is that the backlog was not supposed to be so, and the releases they are doing at the moment is an approach that you may look at as a capital project. There's a difference between capital projects and recurrent expenditure. And under recurrent expenditure, number one should be salary, and pensions is a form of salary paid to a retiree.
But you know that these problems are not from this current government in power.
No, but
it is generated from the past. Let's look at, for instance, from the year 2004. 2004, as a matter of fact, we've had within the region of 2 trillion naira. 2 trillion naira.
Yeah.
And then, as of now, it's about 7 trillion naira in deficits for pensioners. How comes the pensioners under this scheme are being owed this much? I mean, within this short period of time. Who's to blame for this?
Federal government. I'll tell you why. You see, if you treat salary as salary, recurrent, it becomes automatic. It's first line charge. That is how it is done. And if government had adopted that approach all this while, there will not be any talk about the backlog. But because they have allowed it to accumulate, they now started, taking up the cumulative sum in piecemeal. Once you do so, it becomes a capital project approach. It becomes a capital expenditure approach. A capital expenditure, you have a project. And that project, you may have 2-3 years to finish it. And when you do so, what you have is that you budget only a part of that sum. That's what they are doing. If government sees pension as a recurrent issue, as a salary, they will not treat it in piecemeal.
But
They will take on it, and
this is what the government is doing now. I'm getting information that they are actually inculcating what you're saying into the 2017 budget.
What figure are they budgeting?
And are looking to pay pensions side-by-side salaries.
That's the point I'm making. But they are still leaving the cumulative areas.
But this is a change of leave.
Well, it's a little step in that direction.
As a matter of fact,
it's
unprecedented because it has never been done before.
Well, maybe. But the fact remains that they need to do much more. That's the point I'm making. They need to clear the backlog. That is the only way the current approach will make meaning. Because if you pay the pensioners what you owe them cumulatively, they will take care of their problems. Then, in future, you don't owe. That is what the new approach would be. But if you adopt, paying pension and salary side by side only in the future without taking care of the cumulative commitment of the federal government, you have solved only part of the problem. And if you don't take time, the cumulative areas of the pensions will enter voicemail.
As a matter of fact, what was said is that the monthly allocations of pensions to PENCOM will be based on the 2017 appropriation to be paid along with monthly salaries of MDAs.
That is a good one. But I still say, I insist, I will keep advocating that government has to clear the backlog. It's very important. If you don't clear the backlog, you haven't solved much of the problem. Because if you don't do so, you need to understand what the pensioners are going through. These are old men, 60 years, and above, because that is the date at which you retire, then, or 35 years in service, whichever comes first. At that age, the person is already old, frail, mentally, spiritually, physically. You need to take care of him. The way you know a civilized society is the way they take care of their aged. These ones are aged, they are old and sick. Don't forget about the kind of ailments, diseases that come with age.
How possible? Tell me, give me your first-hand experience. How do a pensioner survives an economy in recession?
Yes, you see, I am not a pensioner, but I have relations who are pensioners, and I know what they are going through. So many of them cannot take care of themselves anymore. So many of them cannot take care of their health because their pensions have fallen in arrears. Look, let me tell you, I am working, fairly paid. My wife is working, fairly paid. Combined, salaries of myself and my wife should make us comfortable enough. But I still know the pressure we are under. You can now imagine what a pensioner is going through. When he cannot buy his drugs, can't buy his food, cannot take care of his children.
You've made that point. Now, do you support the idea of a bailout as suggested by the National Assembly?
Well,
as a way forward?
I don't know whether that should be called a bailout. The money should be paid. Whatever nomenclature, it's important that the money is paid. If it's called a bailout, so be it, but it's not even a bailout, because when you talk about bailout, you're talking about intervening where you have no commitment. That's what a bailout is. It's not when the federal government is said to release its own commitment. The money it ought to, statutorily, legally, contribute. Let me tell you, even the act establishing PENCOM and things like that makes non-remittance a criminal offense.
I'm afraid that's where we're going to have to let it go. I want to thank you so much indeed, Executive Director, Transform Nigeria Initiative, talking about the latest coming out from pensions and how well to manage that. Many thanks indeed for coming on State of the Nation. When we return after this break, the courts will be looking at the judgment by the courts on cases filed by the government's anti-corruption agency. Stay with us.